Hi guys, it's Marc Zicree, Mr. Sci-Fi. I've written for Star Trek, Next Generation, Deep Space Nine, Babylon 5, Sliders, Twilight Zone Companion. You know the drill if you've watched these videos before. Today we're going to be talking about why science fiction matters. I mean, in the face of all these tragedies going on, the Malaysian flight being shot down over the Ukraine, Israel and Palestine lobbing missiles at each other, all these tragedies in the world, you might say, well, isn't science fiction with its aliens and robots and androids and all of this, just basically trivial? It's escapism and ultimately meaningless. I beg to differ. I think, speaking as a science fiction writer and as a science fiction fan, I think science fiction is very important, and here's why. Because it's very easy to get caught up in the emotion of the moment and the minutiae of the moment and the noise of the moment. News is constantly coming our way, and it sometimes feels like there's no possibility of resolution. There's no possibility of hope, and science fiction allows us, I think, to step outside our own society, our own events of the moment, and look at it from a different viewpoint and see perhaps what might be going wrong and perhaps forestall it, or alternatively build toward a very positive future. And I'll give you a great example of this and a personal example. When I was a kid, I was a big Star Trek fan, and my mom was dating a fellow named Eddie Leroy, who had been one of the Bowery Boys in the movies. He was always the one behind Hunt's Hall when they were hatching a plan going, yeah, yeah, yeah. And he was a really nice guy, and he knew of my penchant for Star Trek as a little 10-year-old. And one day he pulled up and he said, I have a surprise for you. I have somewhere I'm going to take you. And we went to a building and knocked on the door, and the person opened up the door. It was their apartment, and it was Nichelle Nichols. And this is when Star Trek was on the air. And she gave me, and I was just blown away, and she gave me a signed photo of herself as Uhura, and a signed Star Trek script, her Star Trek script. And it was circled, all the Uhura lines were circled. And being a smart 10-year-old, I said, you got any more of these? And she reached into her wastebasket, her round file, and pulled out 5 more scripts and gave them to me. And I still have those scripts. They're Mimeo, they're not Xerox, they're wonderful, wonderful, wonderful scripts. And I found out years later, as an adult, I ran into Nichelle Nichols, and I told her this story, and she explained to me that normally she saved her scripts, and the reason she was throwing them away at that point was she had gotten fed up with the role of Uhura. She felt they weren't giving her enough to do, and she was going to quit the show. Now, many of you, of course, know where the story goes from there, because at that point she met Martin Luther King, and he said, you must not quit the show. It is the one African-American role on television that's not a menial, that's not a maid or or someone or a servant, and you must stay on that show. And she did, and of course, the rest is history. But the fascinating thing, of course, that story also tells us is Martin Luther King was watching Star Trek, which is pretty cool when you think about it. And he was also, of course, he knew about Rod Serling. I told you earlier about that photo of Rod and Martin Luther King that's in Rod's scrapbooks. But also, when Martin Luther King gave that very famous I Have a Dream speech, and he's saying, I have a dream that someday the sons of slaveholders and the sons of slaves will sit together at the table of brotherhood, he's telling a science fiction story. He's describing a future that hasn't yet happened, that he is saying might happen, could happen, if we had the will to make it happen. And so in telling that story of a future that has not arrived, is very different from the present he's living in, he's creating a possibility. And that's what we as science fiction writers are doing. We're creating possibility and hope, and also sometimes a warning. And it was very interesting when Ray Bradbury told me that Fahrenheit 451 was not a dystopic novel. It wasn't 1984 because it was hopeful for all the darkness. And what I'm doing now with Space Command is the same. It's hopeful. It's a hopeful story of the future. And then the other thing I'll say in closing, in terms of science fiction, is for many of us who are science fiction fans, the first time we ever saw a black president of the United States was in a science fiction movie or a science fiction novel, and here we are in 2014. And of course, the first time we ever saw a female president of the United States was in a science fiction book or a science fiction movie. So we'll see what 2016 brings. So for now, that's all. If you have ideas about how you think science fiction has brought a hopeful vision of the future, or forestalled something, or just commenting on why science fiction matters, please comment, subscribe, like this channel, the Mr. Sci-Fi channel. We're going to be doing videos often and talking about all of these things. If you want to suggest topics for me to talk about, I'll be happy to do those. And again, thanks very much for watching, and we'll see you again next time. Take care. Bye-bye.